That's why they call me bad company. I can't deny. Bad company.
All right, welcome back to the W2W review. I am the Oakland Knight, and joining me from his LA studios is the Raider Pirate. What's going on, Pirate?
What's going on, Raider Nation?
All right, Raider Nation, we are back. We are back from our bye week, if you will. The Raiders had a bye week this past weekend. A lot of interesting things happened, though, while we were on our bye week. Is it good? Is it bad? We're here to discuss that. There's a lot of things that happened. So, Pirate, let's go ahead and start with you, man. What do you got for us on your end?
Yeah, so big time games yesterday. Obviously, again, we had Sunday night games. We had good matchups that came in earlier on in the day. The Chargers losing, unfortunately, the Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs pulling it out. But then we had the Steeler game with the Dallas Cowboys. So again, now the Baltimore Ravens have kind of taken that division at this point. The New England Patriots losing that game to the Seattle Seahawks. That was nice to see. Still puts us in a little bit of a tough position. If you look at the standings at this point right now, we're a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of what's going to be going on here moving forward. If the season ended today, you would take a look at the division leaders. New England would be number one. Baltimore Ravens would be number two. The Houston Texans, who we play on Monday night in Mexico, would be ranked number three. And then Kansas City would be ranked number four. Now, both ourselves and the Denver Broncos, who were able to pull out sort of a last-minute victory there against the Saints, would be vying for those two spots if nothing were to change at this point. So in a bye week, somehow we went from number two overall all the way down to number five at this particular point.
That was the most shocking thing, and I've been saying it leading up to this, that the Kansas City Chiefs was our biggest foe right now, and we really needed them to lose yesterday as far as where we sit and where we stand, as far as where we need to be heading into the division winning. If we don't win the division, like you said, we go from number two, we drop all the way down to number five. So again, the Chiefs have proven over the course of the last few years that they're a team like us right now that doesn't have no quit in them. They have a lot of fight. They're well coached, and they got a lot of great personnel. So watching them win against Carolina the way that they won was a reflection of what we've been able to do this year. So I think that's the biggest test right now, is that Thursday night matchup against Kansas City. These next three games have become more important than they were heading into the bye, and it starts with the Houston Texans Monday night in Mexico City.
Yeah, I mean, again, you take a look at it, and, we've talked about this before, and you and I talked about it earlier today. The Raiders, we started our foundation off right. We didn't try to go out there and just do it one way, do it offensively or defensively. We really built this football team kind of with the foundation of never giving up, staying in the game, believing. We built that intangible, never surrender. And, we've got a good offense, we've got a good defense. But if you take a look at the other two teams in our division, Kansas City Chiefs, 10 out of their last 20-something games, 21, 22 games. More like 18 out of their 22 games or something like that. They've had victories, right? So they put together a 10-game winning streak last year. They're putting together a 5-game winning streak right now. So they have a foundation of never being out of a game, figuring out a way to win. It's a solid foundation. It's the intangible. Outside of the offense, outside of the defense, special teams, there's just an intangible there. You look at the San Diego Chargers, they don't have it. They don't have that intangible. They lose. They're finding ways to lose. But then you look at the Denver Broncos, and they established that foundation a few years ago. So, again, we're not the only team in this division that has that sort of, we're never out of it type of mentality. Kansas City just keeps finding, ways to win. The schedule itself is just going to get tougher for all of us involved. We've got the Texans, then we've got the Panthers, the Bills, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Colts, and then we have that big matchup against Denver. That may not be the most important game. The most important game may be that December 8th game against the Chiefs, that Thursday night game, because like you said, if we can figure out a way to continue to win up until that point, up until that December 8th game, or the Chiefs lose one and we lose one, whatever it is, that becomes a huge game. It's another Denver Broncos Sunday night game. This is a Thursday night, nationally televised game. Wow, if there's going to be a way to do it, this is obviously the way that you would want to do that. Stay even with these guys, get a chance to face off against them. Primetime stage, and just, kick the door into the playoffs at that point.
And you could definitely look at this and you could say, wow, this is after that big Sunday night win against the Broncos. This is kind of some bad news, right? How do you turn a negative into a positive? Well, it's simple. You look at where we come from. 13 years of mediocrity. Last season, Jack Del Rio said at the beginning of the season, last year we learned how to compete. This year we're learning how to win. When it comes down for me, turning this negative into a positive, we're a young football team. So it's very easy for a team like the Raiders right now to become complacent, going into our bye week, being 7-2, being on top of the division. Kansas City winning yesterday kind of evens the playing field where it kind of drops us under them because they got the victory against us. However, Jack Del Rio, his biggest quality, what he's known for the most, is being a motivator, a guy that keeps teams fighting, keeps the team spirit up. And for such a young team, it really becomes upon this coaching staff right now to keep these kids, these young kids, this young talented football team motivated. You got the Kansas City Chiefs, it's more veteran oriented. You got the Denver Broncos, more veteran oriented, except for the quarterback position. We're sitting in a position right now where we got the kind of head coach that knows how to keep his team focused, motivated, driven, and playing for each other. I think that bodes well moving forward, but we just got to make sure that not only do we win these next 3 heading into Kansas City, but we keep ourselves healthy and these young players motivated and not let them hit that rookie wall. Your thoughts, Pirate?
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's a helicopter flying above us, so if you do hear that sound going on there. But no, I agree. I was looking at it today. I'm looking at guys that, we brought in or that we tried to bring in over the offseason. Some of those guys just refused to come in and even to visit with Oakland. And I look at where those guys are now, and I think to myself, wow, what a choice it would have been had you decided to do something different. You look at Todd Bowles, didn't even want to take the call from the Raiders, thought they were too dysfunctional, thought they were headed in the wrong direction. His football team right now looks pretty dysfunctional. Looks like it's headed in the wrong direction. Mike Smith, Mark Trestman, all of these guys that, Jack Del Rio reached out to, Todd Granther, all these different guys, you kind of ask yourself, what could you have brought to this particular football team? This is a good football team. This is a good coaching staff at this point. And we talked about it a little bit. What is Ken Norton going to do from this point? It's pretty clear we're not running the Seattle Seahawks defense anymore. So at this point, can Ken Norton, like you talked about earlier, and I'll let you expound on that, but like you said, can he just be that energy guy, just be the guy that's getting everybody up and ready and going, and go ahead and let Jack Del Rio, call that defense, learn from him. And again, if we can just be consistent on offense, take this running game, take this passing game, and just continue to get better on defense, I think it could be. We could do some things. We could make a serious run here prior to the playoffs. And I've said this before: if you're going to do it in the playoffs, sometimes you got to do it in the regular season. We're going to be tested here over the next couple of weeks. The mantle of this football team will be tested. But like I said, I look at some of these other coaches that said, no, not the Raiders. No, not the Raiders. And you know what? If you're a good football coach, you're not afraid of a challenge. You're not sitting there, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go here. You know what? If you're a good football coach, you can go to Buffalo, a la Rex Ryan, and turn a team like that around. He's struggling. You can go to the Jets and turn a team around. Guess what? He's struggling. That's not to say these guys aren't good coaches, but I think that this football team right now has the right coach for these players and the personnel that they have on hand, and GM.
I think it's outstanding to look at it in the sense of what you get from Seattle, right? There's a little story to be told here, and this is what we were talking about before we jumped on. Pete Carroll is a defensive-minded coach. That's his defense. That's his baby. He did it in USC. He did it before he went to USC, and he brought it to Seattle. If you take a look at the guys that Seattle lost on the defensive coaching side of things, the Todd Bowles, the Brady Quinns, the Ken Norton Juniors, all these guys, and yet Seattle still finds a way to maintain their defensive dominance. They did it again last night against the New England Patriots. This is a good defensive football team. Why? Because it's Pete Carroll's defense. When you look at guys like Brady Quinn, Todd Bowles, Ken Norton Jr., who left that organization trying to carry on what Pete Carroll taught them, it's easier said than done. So it's fair to say that Pete Carroll, regardless if he's the head coach and he's managing the whole football team, this is a guy that has his hands all over his defense. And I think that's what we saw the last 3 weeks here in Oakland is Jack Del Rio recognizing the fact that this wasn't working. It wasn't a Seattle defense carried over to this football team, and he's kind of put his own hands on it. Now, once again, I talked about Jack Del Rio being a real motivator, but he's also been known to be a really good defensive football mind. And now you're seeing him put his stamp on this football team, and we're playing better. Now, Ken Norton has a choice here to learn this system and do what Ken Norton does best, which Ken Norton's a motivator in his own right, and he could coach up the linebackers. So he's going to have to take a little bit of a back seat. He will be asked to do a lot of managing of the defense as far as, the drills that are being ran, the film rooms and things of that nature. But Jack Del Rio is going to be in those meetings, have his hands on what they're doing, calling plays, and growing. So it's going to be interesting moving forward to see how this defensive builds with Jack Del Rio, calling the plays and putting his stamp on this defense. But as we head into the offseason too, so I think it's time for Jack to put his stamp on this defense, because it seems to be the theme as we look on. John Fox, the same thing. That's his defense. He had his hands all over that. So I think in order for us to improve moving forward, Jack Del Rio needs to really cement himself with this defense.
Yeah, and one thing, before we head out to break, I think people need to understand, Bill Walsh created the West Coast offense, and he designed it and he taught it to a bunch of different people, and he had a lot of different disciples that created variations of it. But nobody was ever as prolific as Bill Walsh was with that particular offense. That was his baby. He understood it. He knew how to tweak it. He knew how to get the right players for it. He understood. He wasn't trying to take something that was as good as it could be and change it and shift it to what it was. He created it. And I think that you're really seeing the same types of things from Pete Carroll. The understanding of, this is my baby. I'm going to take a 34 defense with some 43 concepts, vice versa. I'm going to look for these types of players. I want this guy here, that guy there. He went out, bought the groceries, did everything he had to do in order to get those guys in. Just like Jerry Rice. People didn't want Jerry Rice. People didn't want Joe Montana. They wanted them, but there were also a bunch of people saying, the guy's too slow. This guy can't throw far enough. This guy's just a pass catching tight end. You don't want this guy. These offensive linemen, they're too small. They don't have what it takes to compete with the Dallas Cowboys and XYZ. So again, once you understand that, it makes it a lot easier to say, okay, is Gus Bradley, is Dan Quinn, is Ken Norton, are all these guys going to be as successful? I think the answer to that is no. I think you can have levels of success like we're seeing happen in Atlanta, but they're still a horrible defense. Our defense was horrible. You look at Jacksonville's defense, not doing that well. So once again, it just kind of reminds me, people think just because somebody had some success that they can take that and emulate that success. And it took a long time. It took the right type of personnel, and it took a genius to be able to put those things together.
Absolutely. A lot of great points. The point that we're making moving forward here, Raider Nation, is that everybody has their own scheme and the way that they take a game and feel it, and they got to put their identity on it. Regardless of who Ken Norton is, Bill Musgrave, Derek Carr, Khalil Mack, This is Jack's team. It's his philosophy. It's his vision. He's the one that has got to get up there and preach the scheme, the philosophy, and the understanding of what he's building. So I think the more that Jack has his hands on this defense, which we have seen the last 3 weeks, the better our chances are moving forward. We're a young football team. We just need to continue to week in and week out take care of our business, and we should be just fine. Up until this point, we get better and better each week, so that's promising moving forward. I'm looking forward to these next 7 games, and I'm sure you guys are too. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll pick up this conversation when we return. Until then, stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the W2W review. I am the Knight, joined by the Raider Pirate. We've been talking a little bit about this past weekend on our bye week and how some of these teams kind of dropped back down to us, but because the Kansas City Chiefs won, it really changed the playoff dynamic, at least with 7 games left. I mean, it's nothing that we need to hit the panic button on. We're just kind of sitting here talking about philosophies, coaching, what it's going to take moving forward to get where we want to be. With that being said, Pirate, we've been talking a lot about Jack Del Rio and him getting his hands on this football team. What can we say about Bill Musgrave and how he's developed this offense week in and week out? We're really hard on Bill. You know, we're really going to give him a bad time because we want to see a little bit more excitement out of this offense. But we cannot shy away from the fact that he's been consistent. We're on the averaging 30 points a game. This offense continues to improve. You saw a couple of weeks ago against Denver, we kind of took over that running game, and this could take us to the next level. What is your thoughts as we head into this Monday night matchup versus Houston with Bill Musgrave and what he's been able to do the first 9 games?
Yeah, you know, I think in the beginning, like we've talked about many times, I think we didn't quite understand what he was going to do. We had such a firm understanding of what we thought Ken Norton Jr. was going to do from looking at what the Seattle Seahawks defense has done. We really didn't understand what Bill Musgrave was going to do. You know, he's bounced around. You know, he's ran the ball with Adrian Peterson. You know, he's been part of Chip Kelly's staff. You know, he's been here, he's been there. It was with Jack Del Rio when they were in Jacksonville. So I think there were so many different variations of what this guy could do. But I heard Sage Rosenfeld's come on 95.7 the game, and he said something that just kind of changed my mind, and over the last couple of weeks I've understood it. He said, you know, really what Bill Musgrave is doing is he's just getting yards. He doesn't care how he gets them. He doesn't care if it's in the run game. He doesn't care if it's in the passing game. And if you look at this offense and you say, oh, he threw a 3-yard pass to Lee Smith. Oh, what a waste of a play. Or he ran a draw play on 3rd and 16. What a waste of a play. At the end of the day, he's substituting the pass for the run and vice versa. He's just trying to get yards. What he wants is yards. Bring me more yards. I don't care how we get it. And I think what we were looking for was more of a vertical passing game, more attacking the field. We saw what was going on in Pittsburgh with Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown, and we were like, that's what we want, right? We saw what goes on with the Baltimore Ravens. That's what we want, you know, the Cincinnati Bengals. And instead, kind of what we were getting was just kind of more of a take what the defense is giving you, which is much more of a passive approach. But I think, like you said, it's proven to be extremely effective. At this point, I'm going to go back and, like I said, say, hey, you know what? I was wrong about Bill Musgrave. I think he's calling as good of an offense as you could call in this type of a system with that type of a philosophy. You know, at this point, we have weapons all over the field. We've integrated now a strong running game. We can get down the field. I'd like to see us incorporate the tight ends more. But all in all, I'm extremely pleased, you know, with what they're doing on this offense. Could it be done differently? Absolutely, but that may be the plan for year 3, year 4. We got to remember we're still early on in this process. There's still a lot of football ahead, both for this offensive coordinator, for this quarterback, and this offense, I think, as a whole.
I think there's a lot of variables that we need to take in consideration here, and you touched on some of them. Number one is that he was with Jack Del Rio in Jacksonville, and he got fired. I think so. I think that helps with a little bit more of understanding. He knows the expectations of Jack, and then he's gone on. He's been in Minnesota. He was with Philly with Chip Kelly, and he's seen a lot of things. Took a lot of notes on a lot of different philosophies. Then he comes in a situation where he's got a second-year quarterback that was going to learn a new system last year, and I think that they put a good plan together, keeping Carr comfortable, keeping Carr's progressions minimized as so he gets comfortable reading defenses within the system. And we just continue to see growth, not only from Bill Musgrave and his play calling, but Derek Carr and his decision making and his ability to not only read the defense, but put the team in good situations based off the offense that Bill Musgrave has put together. And we talked about this earlier too. Bill Musgrave uses the pass and the arm of his quarterback as an extension of the run game. So, if you're going up against a defense where you feel like you can't run the ball as effective as you want it to, that's where we see a lot of these screen passes that we might not like, but when you break it down and when he does these plays, it's just an extension of the run game. A lot of the times when we see the draw or the wide receiver screen and it's like 3rd and 15 and 3rd and 16, that's totally separate from what I'm talking about, what we see on 1st and 2nd down, these 2-yard passes, 4-yard passes. It's an extension of the run game. I know that John Gruden at one point used to utilize that, and that's what the West Coast offense is kind of set up for to a point. You still want a running game. Bill Musgrave has really taken his hands with the players that he has, and you see him growing. What we saw with the running game and this offensive line, along with Mike Tice, the way that these receivers are starting to get more involved. We saw Andre Holmes, we saw Seth Roberts be more effective over the last few weeks, and they even sent Johnny Holton on a streak against Denver where he drew the PI. So there's a lot of little different elements to this offense that I think Bill Musgrave is slowly tapping into, which gives me a lot of promise and a hope moving forward that this team is only going to be more explosive as we get towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and again, if you take a look at the team itself, Derek Carr, 2,500 yards at this point. He's averaging about 273 yards a game, 17 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions at this point, only been sacked 11 times. So again, I think his sack numbers are going to be down. In the low 20s, which is where you really wanted to be. 99.1 quarterback rating, and he's putting the ball down the field. Latavius Murray, 89 carries, 393 yards. Then you look at DeAndre Washington, 62 carries, 302 yards. Jalen Richard, 43 carries, 279 yards. Now, we don't have an Ezekiel Elliott who's got 1,000 yards already, but between these 3 guys, it's pretty close to 1,000 yards. So we're just kind of doing it by the committee, right? And then you look at our receiving statistics, 58 carries. 58 receptions for 843 yards. Michael Crabtree, 596 yards. Seth Roberts, 277 yards. Walford, 199. Richard, 123. Murray, 103. So again, spreading the ball all over the place. You just don't know where they're coming from. Even Jameis Olawale he's 1 yard short of 100 yards. But you take a look and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players with at least 100 yards receiving on this football team right now. So you can't, like we said, you can't look at it. You can't try to put it into a cookie cutter, I guess is the way that I would say it. I think he is literally doing something different. We saw what he did in Denver. We saw how he brought the run game and just slammed the ball into these guys. We saw how the week before we threw the ball for 500 yards. We've seen him come back from behind. We've seen him stay in front for the entire game. So we've seen this team do so many different things, and this team is growing and they're believing. Again, obviously Derek Carr, guys like Amari Cooper, Donald Penn, these guys are going to make it easier. They're great leaders, for this football team. So we're gonna see. We're gonna see how they do. I mean, it's so exciting. We got a big game against a good football team. Everybody talking about how who have we beat? Well, wait a minute. But the Baltimore Ravens are number 1 in their division. We beat them. The Denver Broncos have a winning record. We beat them. So. I think at this point, this team is growing and it's learning. And again, it's funny, but this offense is the best part of this football team.
And I think that leads us into the final segment of the show. And I think this is a great time to bring this up because, when you analyze a football team, you get a lot of slack, right? I mean, there's a lot of people some people are not going to like what you say. Some people are going to understand and like what you say. And the narrative changes with each and every person. And I thought this would be a good point because we give Bill Musgrave a ton of slack, right? We've throughout this season, we've been hard on Bill Musgrave. And a lot of people will say, well, I thought you guys don't like Bill Musgrave or you don't like Latavius Murray. Look, our job is to analyze this football team, the good, the bad, the ugly, regardless of how good it looks, what's wrong, what can be better, what could be fixed. Look, our narrative hasn't changed. We want a more dynamic offense. We talk about it all the time. The only people that change our narrative is the players and coaches themselves. And that's where I've gained a lot of respect for Bill Musgrave because Bill Musgrave has changed my narrative. Latavius Murray, in one game anyway, has changed the narrative of how we talked about him at the end of the Denver Bronco game. Now we want to see consistency from both these things, and we're going to continue to let these guys dictate our narrative. But it's fair to say at this point that it's a good thing. If you're going to be hard on something, and you have to come back and talk good about something, that just shows promise of the football team. It also shows that we were onto something because the narrative has changed because some of the things that we have talked about, we've seen them implement. And that's not patting ourselves on the back like we're geniuses. It just goes to show that they get it, we get it, you all get it, and together we grow as the team grows. Pirate, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And again, it's not about, he said, she said, this guy, that guy. You see commentators on television say certain things. You hear people on the radio say certain things. And you watch people on YouTube say certain things. And then you've got the fans' perspective and everyone else. And, like I said, I'm not the kind of person that's just going to sort of shy away because somebody says this or somebody says that. I see Latavius Murray, and I will give Latavius Murray credit and say, wow, man, if he could do that, you're telling me if this guy could do that 15 times in a season, not 16, or maybe even 12 times, if he could do that 12 times in a season, we would have nothing negative to say about Latavius Murray. So it's not, and I said some things that I should probably backtrack. The pigeon-toed, cross-eyed pigeon-toed thing, that was out of frustration about, why aren't we doing more of what we saw against Denver? Like I said, if we saw eight games like that, 9 games like that, this guy would be Ezekiel Elliott. This guy would be Adrian Peterson. They could block for him like that, and he could rack up that type of yardage. It could be totally different. So once again, like the Knight is saying, the narrative gets changed by Bill Musgrave. We talked about it at the beginning of the season. We got this big offensive line. Let's run the ball. Let's do some play action. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? Why are we not utilizing the tight ends? And everybody can ask those questions. That's our right as fans, as people that analyze these types of things. That's our right. We could say whatever it is that we want to say, but we have to, at a certain point, be able to walk back to and say, hey, you know what? I was wrong. I was wrong. I thought that, this guy, we were going to do the same thing we were doing last year. This offense is different than it was last year. Last year, I didn't understand it. It didn't work. It sputtered. It was this. It was that. This year, there seems to be a much more organic feel to it. It's working a lot better than it did before.
And that's the point here, guys, is we're not here. This is a fan cast. We never shy away from that. We're fans first, obviously. We love this football team. We've loved this football team our whole life. But when we set out on this adventure, we set out to be analysts. We're going to analyze this football team. So we cannot essentially come on here and just be cheerleaders and rah-rah boys, and that's what we tend not to do. So we're going to be hard where we feel like we need to be hard. But at the end of the day, we have no problem coming on saying, oh wow, man, we misread that one, or we didn't see that the way that we thought we should. And Latavius Murray once again one game, so we can hope to see this continue moving forward, and that's on the shoulders of Bill Musgrave, Mike Tice, this offensive line, and really, I mean, just the fact that they ran the 2 plays 20 times and Denver couldn't stop it. Have that mentality moving forward. That's all we've ever asked. So we see the comments. We understand that we were hard on Murray and we were hard on Musgrave. And both those guys in the Denver game totally changed the narrative for 1 week. But as analysts, we got to keep coming and bringing our A game week in and week out, and that's what we plan on doing. I just wanted to put that message out there. This team is on the rise. This team is dominating. This 7-2. We're right where we need to be. With that being said, guys, we're running out of time, so we want to remind you guys could find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at The Will to Win. You also can find us hopefully soon, about 3 days a week on Oakland Raider football, as well as once a week on Raiders411.com, where we give our game breakdown. And once again, guys, we just appreciate all the love and support that we've gotten over the last 6 months, and we just hope that we continue to grow and give you the best football that we can give you. Anyways, for the Raider Pirate, I am the Knight. Until tomorrow, you guys stay Raider strong.
And that's why they call me